the first smartphone in the world to sport an inbuilt holographic display. I'm Mrwhosetheboss, and this is my full review. This is the Take E1 smartphone, and innovation doesn't even quite cover what they've managed to achieve with this display. Very similar to the 3DS console, this is a glasses-free 3D experience, but more on that later. In terms of how it's built, I was really impressed. It's pretty large, but it actually palms rather nicely. The back is a grippy matte finish, similar to the OnePlus 2 actually, and nothing like the glossy plastic nightmares that you used to see on budget Chinese devices. It's not particularly slim or light, but it feels solid, substantial, and well built, and that's all that really matters. Considering its price of $109 or about 70 UK pounds, the display is really on form. It is a 5.5-inch 1080p affair, and it's pretty bright, pretty colourful, and rather nice to look at. Now the one downside, and this really is quite a big flaw of the device, is that it comes with Android 4.2. Now for some people, admittedly, that's going to be an instant turn off, and I really wasn't impressed with that. Scrolling through the settings, it looks pretty unremarkable. There's nothing here which we've never seen before. AirView does work, but not particularly well. So although initially you're going to be extremely disappointed, the more I actually started using the phone, I started to realise that Android 4.2 is not actually much of a deal breaker. There's very little that even phones with Android 6.0 can do that this one can't. The camera is a 13 megapixel affair. We have flash and autofocus, and generally speaking it is slightly above average. Images are really quite crisp. There's a good amount of detail there. Depth of field is solid. Vibrance and saturation just don't quite keep up though, and the contrast is not as rich as you would see on higher end devices. HDR mode significantly improves this though. You can see much more light and much more dark in the photo, and colours do jump out a little bit more. Having said that, the shutter time isn't exactly fast as it is, and with the HDR mode on, you can be waiting up to a whole second before the photo actually clicks, which isn't really acceptable. Personally, I think the video is really good here. It shoots at 720p, but the image is very clear for that resolution. The audio too is pretty standard stuff. With a rear-facing speaker, it can sound a little bit muffled when the phone is placed on its back, but it is very loud. Detail is pretty okay. So now we move on to Holo Space. So this is the application that controls the 3D aspect of the display. You have different sections, movies, games, a Holo show, and a Holo gallery. The way this technology works is it actually has a second camera on the bottom of the smartphone, and this looks at your eyes and sees where you're looking. Holo Show is totally useless. I mean, you basically just move the phone around and see various different models from different angles. 3D Gallery is a bit cooler. You can actually download 3D images and then view them in 3 dimensions, and this is really nice. And then we move on to 3D video, and this is insane. It's kind of like going to a 3D cinema show, but without wearing glasses, and the depth of field is huge. You know, this car, it goes right into your face. It feels like it's hit you and then some. You know, this scarf throwing out the screen, it's very immersive. However, to fully enjoy it, you have to be directly in front of the smartphone, and so it's not really for a group viewing experience. On top of that, the store, where it actually contains games, videos, and apps to actually use this 3D technology, is very limited and is not really tailored to a UK audience so much. So how fast is the Take E1? Well, it actually sports an octa-core processor, the MTK 6592, which is basically a high-end processor from last year from MediaTek. Now this is not ultra high-end. It wasn't even ultra high-end last year. It is a solid performing chip. This is supported by 2GB of RAM, which all around actually makes for rather snappy performance, but you won't exactly be acing all the benchmarks with it. Having said that, for the money you pay, this is actually one of the faster phones you can buy. Admittedly, the MT6753 is actually faster, but you don't tend to see that in devices under $150. With an Antutu score of nearly 35,000, it actually predicts game performance above average and general performance to be very snappy, which I have to say is kind of the case. Most 3D games seem to run without too much issue, which is actually something I was surprised by considering this is a high-resolution 1080p display, and that even more powerful chips sometimes struggle, so clearly there's some good optimization going on here. Although every game won't run well, this is a solid device for gaming. The absence of ultra high-end components can also be noticed when you're browsing the internet. It's actually pretty good, but images will take just a little bit longer to load, scrolling might not be quite as smooth, and these things all add up to give a good but not ultra high-end experience, which is exactly what you'd expect from this device. We also have a 2500 mAh battery, which unfortunately provides a little bit below average battery life. With a push, you should be able to get through a full day of heavy usage. It does also have an SD card support up to 64GB. So guys, that is the Take E1 smartphone. It has a lot of advantages, a fantastic display, pretty fast performance, as well as expandability. And this holographic display actually has a huge amount of potential. I mean, imagine if there was a switch where you could just flick between 2D and 3D for the whole UI experience. That would be cool. Unfortunately though, as it is, it feels a little bit disjointed, where they're not really adding too much more than just a novelty. Thanks a lot for watching guys, I'm Mrwhosetheboss, and this is Insanely Cool Tech.